Social 20, Nationalism. So, my hope is to make these videos once a week to kind of supplement whatever you're reading or pretending to read. So this week, it's about national interest. And the main part of a national interest, now I know you're glossing over, you're like, dude, I don't care about learning, I just want a grade. But for those of you who want a little bit more, we're going to talk about a thing called sovereignty. Now, sovereignty, you're going to see pop up next to the Arctic. That's sort of boring. But the idea is sovereignty is you create your own fate. You control your own destiny. So get out of here, mom and dad. I'm making my own laws. So you do it without interference from foreign governments, and you do your own thing. Now, like I said, the Arctic thing is relevant because it's Canada, so that's why there's material on that. But the big one that we'll allude to, that you'll lead into World War I, has to do with a place called Serbia and Austria-Hungary. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff at play, but basically, Austria-Hungary, big country, Serbia, little country. Serbia wants sovereignty, Austria-Hungary usually doesn't give it to people. I was going to make a whole video about how like crazy the war was and how it started, but I found this, so you should just watch it because it's much better than whatever I could do.
Sure, most would say World War I started with a gunshot. But there's a lot more to the story. This is Leopold Loika. He was born on September 17, 1886, in the old Bohemian village of Telch. Originally a horse wrangler, Leopold moved on to real horsepower when he became Archduke Franz Ferdinand's chauffeur in 1909. Archduke Ferdinand was first in line to the Austro-Hungarian throne, then occupied by Emperor Franz Joseph I. But serving as emperor wasn't all it was cracked up to be. Austria-Hungary wasn't exactly the most popular European country at the time. 1908. The Austro-Hungarian Empire annexes Bosnia. This ticks off Bosnian nationalists, who wanted to unify all southern Slavic countries under one government. Tensions are still high in 1914 when Archduke Ferdinand decides to visit Bosnia. If there were any place where Ferdinand were to get got, Sarajevo, Bosnia's capital, would be it. Despite this, Ferdinand decides to drive around Sarajevo with the top down in his limousine. Leopold Loika is driving when, out of the corner of his eye, he spots a small bomb hurtling towards the Archduke and his wife. He slams on the gas and the bomb misses its target. The bomb was thrown by Nedeljko Čebrinović, a member of the young Serbian nationalist movement. There are a few injuries, but Ferdinand and his wife are unharmed. After gathering their bearings, Leopold drives on to a scheduled meet and greet between the Archduke and local officials. The officials want to take the Archduke on a tour of the city, but Ferdinand instead decides he wants to visit the wounded victims from the bomb attack. He gets back into the car with his wife and has Leopold drive off to the hospital. In all fairness to Leopold, he didn't know the exact route. No map, no GPS. He made a mistake and turned onto the wrong street. Unfortunately for Leopold and the rest of Europe, this was the street where Gavrilo Princip, one of the co-conspirators of the earlier assassination attempt, happened to be having a drink. Princip can't believe his luck. He has an opportunity to finish out what he started earlier that day. As the crowd tries to subdue Princip, the Archduke and his wife are left bleeding in the car. One bullet struck the Archduke in the neck, the other his wife in the stomach. Both die within the hour. In response to the assassination of the heir to its crown, Austria-Hungary seeks support from Germany. Germany agrees, and Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Russia, Serbia's ally, mobilizes its forces, and as a result, Germany declares war on Russia. Russia's ally, France, then mobilizes its forces, which causes Germany to declare war on France. In turn, Great Britain declares war on Germany. Austria-Hungary then declares war on Russia, Serbia declares war on Germany, and France and Great Britain declare war on Austria-Hungary. The First World War has begun, and all because of a wrong turn.
So after that wrong turn, you may be noticed on that map, but Canada, not part of World War I. They were just brought along by Great Britain because we didn't have sovereignty at the time. We were a dominion, or not dominion. We were basically still sort of a colony under Great Britain. So when they declared war, we went to war. So that's what brings Canada in. And then while we're there, we build our resume by fighting gas, as it was. We fight in the mud. We prove ourselves strong. And the place we do it loudest is a place at Vimy Ridge. You probably have already heard the phrase or the place, Vimy Ridge. It's part of the myth making of Canada, our nation building. That's where we were forged. So, in a nutshell, the story goes, Vimy Ridge was a key strategic point that the Germans held that the British couldn't take, that the French couldn't take, and then the Canadians fighting for the first time together, because usually they're just like tagging along, like the British are over here, and they're like, we should bring a Canadian. But for the first time, Canadians fighting together take the ridge. Now, sounds great, and it's true, but there's some things we kind of skip over when we're building a nation. First, the British and the French couldn't take it, and then we did. Well, that's because there was a whole bunch of Germans when the British and the French tried, and when we came, there was a lot less Germans, so it was a little easier to take. Two, there was a new, it's called a creeping barrage. Nerdy war stuff, but basically instead of bombing a whole bunch and hoping everyone died and running in, because it turns out in World War I, they would do that, and turns out people would just hide from the bombs and then be like, not dead. So instead of doing that, they would bomb a little bit and then walk a little bit, and bomb a little bit and walk a little bit. Sounds like it makes sense. Anyway, so we do that at Vimy Ridge. It works pretty well, so we get credit for that. Even though it wasn't necessarily Canadians that came up with it, we get credit. And lastly, when we think of Canada, we think of peacekeeping, accepting, multicultural. What we don't think of is militaristic or war. But when we talk about taking the ridge, or we talk about pushing back the enemy, why did they get pushed back? How did we take the ridge? We killed people. So it's a weird part of Canadian myth-making that we include this war story. The foundational part of our nation is Vimy Ridge. But we killed other Canadians killed Germans, and that's how we took the ridge. So it's not that it's a myth that we took Vimy Ridge. It's just we kind of glossed over all the context to provide this very glorious Canada. Because when the war is over, remember how we got dragged into the war? Well, during the peace talks, we get a seat at the table. We don't get to say anything, like the kids' table over in the corner, but we're still at the table by ourselves, without mom and dad. So it's a success. World War I is seen as the moment where Canada becomes a nation. Hopefully this video will provide a little bit of context, a little bit of added stuff to your notes that you're pretending to read, and you could watch that oversimplified video because it does all of this even better. Let's focus on Canada, but who cares?